Hey, and welcome to the channel. Welcome back to the channel. It's been a while. Summer's been getting in the way, and I've been preferring to drink beer in the garden and have barbecues and go away for weekends and such things for the last month or so. But here we are, a brand new retro PC to take a look at. It's an interesting one as well. It wasn't cheap, it wasn't expensive. Nobody knows if it works, but it's interesting enough. I thought I'm going to take a punt on it, and there's a couple of other reasons for that, which we'll get to in just a second. It has this cool kind of mat on the top. It looks suspiciously like modern Windows logos. I guess that was just for the monitor to stop it scratching the case, but it gives it a very distinctive look nevertheless. PC is made by Ambra, and they were originally the cheap arm of IBM before they started making their own cheap sort of consumer machines. So yeah, these were merged into IBM wholly in the end, but at this point they were a separate brand, IBM's budget brand. Take a little peek on the back, you can see some of the other reasons why I plumped for this. I can't remember what it cost. I think it was about 90 or £100 or something like that, but it was not insignificant. We've got the usual serial ports. You can see it's a PS2 model, and we've got our I/O stuff going on here. There is an interesting sound card in there. That was the primary reason I went for this, just judging by its age. I thought, I bet that's an interesting sound card. And I figured that, you know, even if the thing didn't work, hopefully the sum of all the pieces would kind of cancel out my expenditure. Anyway, let's get the lid off and we'll find out if indeed I've been ripped off or whether I've actually got some worthwhile stuff in here. So the first thing we see is this rather nice, rather chunky Hi-Pro AT power supply, I guess it is. 150 watts. So yeah, that'd be a nice thing to have if it works anyway. Off down at the side we've got a couple of old school small capacity IDE hard drives, I would guess, so they'll be nice if they work too. Get some of these cables out the way and then we can take it apart and see what's lurking underneath, because you can't really see anything the way that it's laid out at the minute. The cables are out of the drives, but they lead to an I/O card in one of the ISA slots. And yeah, I can see the sound card next to it, which is an 8-bit sound card. Always cool to have another one of those in my collection. So yeah, hopefully if this stuff works, it will be okay. And then we can get this nice power supply out of the case. It is definitely an AT power supply. Wasn't quite sure. Assumed it would be for 486, but yeah, that'd be nice if it works, because a lot of my AT power supplies have died and I've been using converters and stuff, but I still like to have the old originals if I can. And yeah, a couple of nice hard drives there. I can see it's a Western Digital Caviar and a Maxter. They look like kind of 100, 200 megs, maybe 500 megs, something like that. That'd be cool. I like having these in the old machines, the original ones, as long as they still work. So I'll be pleased if what we've seen so far, if the 8-bit sound card works, the 2 hard drives work, the power supply works, I think I will have not wasted too much money, even if the computer itself doesn't work. And then we've got an extremely dusty and slightly shagged looking floppy drive in this bay. And I'm not quite sure if that's slightly proprietary looking or whether a standard drive will fit, but we'll find out in a minute. Yeah, and there's the Western Digital Caviar. So yeah, a couple of nice old low capacity drives, I think. We'll find out exactly how big in just a second. Yeah, and having removed that, there's a Varta battery there that has spewed its guts all over the motherboard, so yeah, who knows. There's a CD drive of some description. I'm going to say that it's not going to be anything particularly interesting, but hopefully it'll work, and then it'll be just another thing that we can use. Yeah, so the drive is from 1996, made by Hitachi, so nothing very exciting. Get the front bezel off. Has to be said, it's a very smart machine. It's pretty well made as well, considering that Ambra was supposed to be like a budget end of IBM systems. We've got a full complement of 30-pin memory here, all slots filled, 2 banks. I'm going to guess that maybe 2 megs each, so maybe 4 megs in RAM, but you never have too much of this stuff, so it'd be cool that I've got that. So yeah, this thing has a 387 stroke overdrive socket, and yeah, there was that CPU was sitting in it, whatever that may be. It doesn't look like the right CPU because it hasn't got the extra pin that you would normally have. I'm not sure what that extra pin does. I don't think it really did anything. It was disabled in the 3.8 and the 487, I think. Possibly on the overdrive as well. I don't know whether it had any function, but the CPU that's in there certainly doesn't have the extra pin that you would get for the overdrive socket. So who knows what that is? Anyway, time to find out. So it's got one of those cool little clip-on fans, which are quite nice for 486s. Once you get up to the ones that need cooling, like the DX2s. So if we get that off, and indeed that's exactly what it is, a DX2. I don't think that really belongs in the overdrive socket, but I'm guessing somebody had this machine, it didn't work, they just thought they'd try their luck and cram any old CPU in there. So taking the rest of the cables out, we've got the serial number down there, which you can see now, AMB2511, I guess that's what it is, or the model number anyway. And now everything's out the way, and we can see the motherboard in its entirety. So get that out, and I'll take a closer look and see what the damage is. It was a bit of a fiddle, but it came out in the end, and you can see it's got this kind of attached I/O plate on the back. It's got some kind of built-in VGA, and yeah, it looks like a nice board. It would be nice to resurrect it if it doesn't work already, though I'm going to say it doesn't look, just by I've already seen the level of gunk that's gone on with that battery spill, so we'll take a closer look at that in a second. And as you can see, this board is ganky to say the least. And then if we take a little look down to the corner there, yeah, it's extensive. You can see all the little green crusties on all of the contacts on those resistors. I can see it's gone into some of the ICs. I can see all those traces are green when they shouldn't be. I think I'm going to have my work cut out for me if I can do anything about this, but we shall see. Now, usually you quite often get away with the back of the board being okay when these kind of things happen, when there's sort of less gunk spewed everywhere. But here you can see, well, I can see, probably you can't on the video, that all the wires are kind of clogged up with green fuzzy goo, and you can see that even some of the traces here are kind of crappy as well. But we'll give it a go. So it's in the bath. It's about to get doused with white vinegar to try and bubble away some of that crappy green goo. And we'll give it a good rinse, and then yeah, hopefully we'll be able to do something with it maybe. So the board's been drying all night after having a good rinse, and it's looking a bit cleaner. Got some cache RAM here. I'm gonna guess that's the full 256k, possibly, maybe 512, who knows. I'm going to go with 256, and there's tag RAM chips on there as well, a couple of little surface mounted chips around where the battery was, which need attention. I don't know what they are for, cache controllers or something perhaps. I took a closer peek through the magnifying glass, and there is extensive damage everywhere, but I'm going to turn it on and see what happens. I'm not holding my breath. So we've got the thing out on the bench, got taken that silly processor out, so we're just using the onboard CPU. The onboard CPU is actually in a socket, though I could not for the life of me get it out. Is actually it's 486 sx25, so we're running with that. As far as I can see, all the jumpers are set up for that, and we'll see if we can get any output. The answer is a resounding no, not a beep, but at least the power supply is working, which is cool, and putting out the correct voltages, and yeah, dead as a doornail. So there's nothing for it except to start the laborious task of checking continuity. I'm going to start by checking the obvious ones. You can see some of the traces going from one place to the other, but some of them are running underneath other ICs. There's one running underneath the tag RAM. There's also others running underneath those two chips to the right of the tagram, which I think might be the cache controller chips perhaps. Either way, we're going to have to lift some of those to take a closer look. There was some corrosion on some of the pins on the SX processor, so I did manage to clean that up, and they were bridging, managed to get in between them, get rid of all of the crap off them, and check the continuity of the pins against this pinout diagram that I managed to find online, and that all actually seemed to be okay in the end, so hopefully that will be fine. And then the next thing was to get the hot air on these, whatever they are. I'm calling them cache controllers. Someone will probably tell me that they're not and they're something else, but they both need to come up. I can see there's raised pads there already and a lot of broken traces disappearing underneath them, so we'll pop those off and see if we can make any sense of what's going on underneath. And they came off, and now we can see what's going on underneath them and hopefully be able to see if there's anything we can do about it. You can see some traces, some of the pads rather, that came off with that thing, which I'd already seen were corroded at the end and were already kind of lifting. And you can see there's a multitude of broken, corroded traces under there as well. So my plan for the pads, which are still sticking to the contacts on the chip, are to just try and bridge them somehow to a point on the trace where they would have connected. We'll get to that in a minute. So yeah, there's this, guessing it's tag RAM needs to come out. We need to get that socket out as well, because some of these corroded traces run underneath that as well. Just get on the other side of the board, get the desoldering gun out and remove that tag RAM socket. While I was over here, I also did continuity testing on the traces that looked a bit ganky, but to be honest, they all actually seem to have continuity. They look a bit cleaner now that I've given it a scrub, so I'm hoping that that's just surface stuff. And as far as I could test, the wires coming through from the other side seemed to be all right also, so I'm going to go with that. I have to confess, I hate doing crap like this. I don't mind doing a light fix, but this one's going to be quite involved, so don't hold your breath. All the chips are out the way, and I can see what's going on now, and hopefully sort of start tracing stuff. Get rid of any leftover bits of solder on the pads from the surface mounted chips, and apart from that, I've prepped some jumper cables in advance. So the idea is to just try and jumper as many of the broken connections as I can find and just see how that goes. As I said, the back seemed okay, so really it's just this bottom corner, but there are many broken traces, many lifted pads and many seemingly clogged wires, so well, we'll give it a go. Let the patching begin. First cable in, many to go. So the patch cables I was putting in are quick and dirty, no consideration for tidiness and length going on here. I just want to get all of the broken connections patched and get those chips back in place, and then literally just see how it goes. If it works, I'm not in any way optimistic. At that point I will consider tidying it up a little bit, but this is just going to be to see if we can get the thing doing anything at all. After initially starting using the same coloured cable for all of the traces, I soon realised that was stupid and I couldn't remember what end went to which when they accidentally became detached or whatever. So I've switched them all to coloured coded cables, so at least I know which end belongs to which, and I have a little map written out on a piece of paper here to remind me. So that took a while, and here we are back in a position where we can give it a go again. So we just plugged it in using the onboard VGA and nothing happened. So yeah, I'm going to call that a fail. So I'm going to call it with that because I was getting a bit frustrated, and I've still got the board. I might go back and have another look at it at some point in the future, but I was getting to the point where I wanted to make a video and I was trying to film stuff and trying to do all that patching at the same time. It's getting to be a bit frustrating, so in the interests of completion, I've decided to put that motherboard aside for now. So I went mooching around in my motherboard collection and found this, which I got a while ago and I've never really used it for anything. It's an ECS board. It again has a 387/overdrive slot, and this one has a DX250 already in it, so this will possibly be a nice one to put in the machine, at least in the absence of the original motherboard. It has this, it says computer bus on there. I'm not sure whether this is a VLB slot or one of those earlier bus sockets that we had before they settled on VLB as a standard. I'll investigate that a little bit later, but for now I'll probably just stick an ISO graphics card in there. We've got a full complement of cache chips in here as well. I think this is only 256K if I remember correctly. And we've got the overdrive socket, so I've got a few potential overdrive chips to try out in there, which we could experiment with at some point in the future if this board works nicely. We've got a full complement of RAM in here as well. I can't remember how much it is, but I'm guessing it's got 4 megs in as well, so we don't need to transfer the memory over. Then we've got a CPU. This time it's a DX50. I know these things ran hot, so it's quite nice that we've got that little clip-on fan that came with the DX2 in the other machine. I can never quite figure out whether this thing is soldered in or not. It looks like it's in a socket, but it doesn't want to budge when you try and pull it. One thing, this is an AT board, so the nice little I/O shield on the case will have to go, because all we've got is an AT keyboard connector on here. Apart from that, it's a nice board. This one's nice and clean. Has no battery, which is probably why it survived. This one just doesn't seem to have any onboard battery whatsoever. It's got the external battery connector, so I guess it had an external battery only. No onboard VGA here, so we're going to be using my Sanglabs ET4000, which would probably be a nice little match for this machine. And I can't even remember if I've tested this board before, so it's going to be a case of getting it on the bench and powering it up and see if it posts first of all before we do anything else. Just going to use all the original stuff. Hopefully all of this stuff works. The floppy drive was dead, so I've had to bring in another floppy drive, but apart from that, it's all the original hard drives and what have you, and cables and whatnot. I'm going to use this fan too. So we wait with bated breath. Will it work? Yes, it will. So yeah, a lot more straightforward than messing about with that other one, and at least we've got a motherboard that works, that's more or less period correct. It's a shame that the Ambra is not going to be all original anymore. So specs on the post screen are going to tell us how much memory we've got, and it's 8 megs, which is nice. Thought it might be 4, saying that we've got our 486DX or 387SX, which would be kind of pointless to have with the 486DX of any description in it. We've got a DX50 in there. I guess overdrive is a possibility at some point, but yeah, apart from that, all seems to be working well. Just need to set those hard drives up. I think I tried to set it up, but I think I set it up the wrong way around, because the Western Digital drive is 640 megabytes and the Maxter is 250, and I've set it up for the Maxter, but the chances are the 250 would have been the D drive and probably wouldn't boot anyway. After fiddling around and setting up the larger hard drive, the 650 meg one, as the drive, the only drive that's set up at the minute, the other one wouldn't boot because it was set to slave, which is not surprising, but this one should theoretically boot, and it didn't. So I'm booting in with a Windows 98 floppy, so I can take a look, because it does seem to have sort of loaded itself in the BIOS correctly. And with the Windows 98 disk, once you got in there, you could go into the C drive, it would browse to it okay, and you could do a dir on it, a directory, and yeah, it reads it okay, it just doesn't boot for some reason. Not quite sure why, but you can see on there there's nothing particularly interesting, some business stuff and memory management stuff, so I think I'm probably just going to format this and install a fresh copy of DOS 6.22 on it. And in time-honoured tradition, off we go, installing DOS 6.22. And that was all done. Quick reboot, see if it boots into that hard drive, and it does. So that's nice. So at least I know that that Western Digital drive, that Caviar 640 megabytes, I think it was, works. So awesome. Once that was done, it's just a case of popping the max to 250 meg drive into the other position on the IDE cable, booting it up again, and then yeah, you can get into there too, and you can see it's really just business stuff, so nothing terribly interesting. I'll leave that rubbish on the smaller drive for now, but the system's up and running. So now it's just going to be a matter of seeing if it'll fit in the case. It's such a cool case. It's a shame we can't use this IO bezel thing. I'm just going to leave it open, so there's going to be a big gaping hole at the back where you plug the keyboard in. There's not much I can do about that now. I will have another poke around on that motherboard to see if there's anything I've missed. If not, over time I might find a better suited motherboard. One bad thing, there's posts that are actually welded to the bottom of the case here to fit the other motherboard, and while they line up, there's two of them don't have matching holes on this board and just basically butt up against the bottom, potentially causing shorts. So I'm going to have to put some tape over those. It's the best I can think of to stop it shorting anything on the back. So once I was sure that it wouldn't cause any shorts, hopefully it won't slip off when I put the motherboard in, we can get the board in and get it secured. So it's secured on the front 4 posts. It's sitting on the back posts, so it's not like it's not supported. There's just no holes that line up to those back 2. And yeah, it's all in, and you can see where the AT keyboard socket's just kind of going to sit there in the gaping hole where the IO panel was. And then it's just a case of getting the rest of it back together. Get the PSU in there, then we'll get the drives in, and hopefully we'll end up with a nice little system, albeit not quite original. We'll just put the original CD drive back in. I'm not sure if it works. I've had to retrofit a more modern floppy in there. It was a silver one, so you can see the silver button poking out there. It's not an ideal fit. It's a bit tricky to get those discs in and out and to push that button. If I wanted to use this on a regular basis, it'll do for now, but I need to figure out a way of getting a better lined floppy drive that kind of matches the original one, or I might take the original one apart and see if there's anything that can be done. So apart from the motherboard, everything is out of the other machine. Same I/O card. Well, we've obviously had to put a graphics card in because we don't have onboard graphics here, but all of the rest of the stuff works, which is nice. So despite the fact that it wasn't a functioning motherboard, I think I've done okay for. I've got another DX266, a couple of nice drives, a nice sound card that we haven't tested yet. Okay, we've got the drives in, we've got the CD-ROM in there now. The only real thing left is the sound card, which was a nice one. That it kind of recoups a lot of my loss on this machine, because these nice little 8-bit sound cards do tend to go for a reasonable amount of money on eBay. It's nice to have another one. I've only got one other, which was a Sound Blaster 2 clone, no name. But this one is an Aztec Sound Galaxy BX2, which is, funnily enough, also a Sound Blaster 2 clone. Aimed at the cheap end of the market, but still a nice score. And there it is. It's a smart looking little system. It's a nice case. I really want to get a floppy drive that lines in to that slot well, and maybe get a slightly better matching CD-ROM drive, but it's a nice machine. I would like to get this one all working perfectly if I can. So it's all working as it should so far. The only 2 things I have to do now is set up the CD-ROM drive by putting the entries into the config sys and autoexec back, and to check the sound card. And once that's done, apart from a bit of a fiddle with a slightly ill-fitting floppy drive, it will be a complete build, which is cool. Did a quick test of the CD drive and it's working fine. So now let's just see if we get this sound card, get some drivers on it and see if it actually makes any sound. I think that would be the thing that would redeem this purchase, given the fact that the motherboard doesn't work. Got 2 nice old hard drives out of it, got a processor, got CD-ROM. It's not particularly exciting, but I've got this nice sound card. I think that's the best gain from it. I probably would break even if I resold this stuff on eBay, so I don't feel quite so bad about buying a DOF computer. But yeah, let's see if the sound card works. I'm quite excited about this. I imagine this card would have been a pretty cheap option when this machine came out. From an earlier generation, I'd say that 8-bit sound card would be more at home in an 8086 or a 286. I will probably not keep it in this machine. If I keep using this machine, I would put a Sound Blaster 16 or something in there. But hopefully it'll work, and it'll be a nice thing to have in my collection. Let's see.
Sound check, 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 sound check.
But hey, there we go. I'm pleased about that. So now we need something a bit more juicy to try out on. So I recently got this. This is the first Land of Law game, Lands of Law. And I'm not quite sure if these floppies work, but we shall try it out and see what it sounds like. Lands of Law, of course, is a classic from Westwood, who are my favourite publisher. Dune 2 being my favourite game, and I loved all of the other RTS games they made around Dune, and then of course there's Command and Conquer, and yeah, my favourite publisher. So you know, this is an early one. I've not really looked at this one.
Virgin Interactive Entertainment presents the Westwood Studios production of Lands of Law, the Throne of Chaos.
Haha, the voice of Captain Jean-Luc Picard. And yeah, it's amazing how similar this music sounds to the Dune 2 music as well, which is very cool.
My liege, it is as we feared.
So that's kind of it for this video. It wasn't what I was hoping. I was hoping that motherboard would survive somehow. I will have another look at it just in case there's anything obvious that I missed, but beyond that, I think it's probably beyond my repair skills. But at least I got a machine out of it that's up and running. I need to get a better fitting floppy drive. But yeah, I'm still kind of glad I got it for the bits and pieces inside. But yeah, at least it's a working 486, and well, they're always worth having. So that's it for this video. It was a bit of a shame I didn't get the original motherboard working, but at least there's a system at the end of it. So I hope you enjoyed watching it, and I hope you'll join me for the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Will not make me wait again. It's a pretty little package. At last!